Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of A Cup of Joe. As always, I'm your host, Joe. Today, we have a very special guest with us. He is fly fisherman extraordinaire. At least that's how I view him in my eyes. The great mentor of fly fishing, Bill Bidnell. And Bill, you've been attending the church longer than I have, but maybe for some of our viewers who don't know you, do you want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I've been attending at this church for over 40 years under Pastor Nettleton, and just how he brought the word. And at that time, they had children's Sunday school, but also adult Sunday school at the same time.
Yeah. And
the adult Sunday school teachers were really good, and they answered basically all the questions and were very patient. And so I mean, I wasn't a Christian, a born-again Christian, as they say, at that time. I was a good Anglican. I attended church like 4 times a year type thing.
Sure.
But I just always felt if you were a good person that you'd go to heaven. I knew there was God and I knew about Jesus, but it wasn't personal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I gave my heart to the Lord that it all changed. It became alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. When did you give your heart to the Lord?
1978-ish.
Okay.
I can't remember that far.
It's okay. I'm not good with math, so I'm not going to figure out how far along that was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here with me today.
No problem.
So, as always, we're here for some good conversation based around the sermon series that we've been doing, but also some great coffee as well. So, with us today, we have coffee from Wayne and Frida, which is based out of Penticton. And this is the Tug number 6 roast, and it is Guatemalan coffee. So, we're going to give this a whirl. And, the guest we've had in a little while was your wife, Irene.
That's right.
And the great crime then was that we didn't have creamer. But just for you, Bill.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
Just for you.
Oh. Of course, the real coffee connoisseur has it black, right?
That's right. The real coffee connoisseur has it black, but that's okay. This is a college trick. You put the creamer in first, and then you dump in the coffee. You don't need a spoon. This is something that I learned when I still took cream in my coffee. All right.
Excellent.
So first, I have to give it a good whiff. Very almost fruity, I think, off the top there. Let's give her a sip. I think I brewed it too watery.
I think so.
I think I did.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah, I'm thinking okay. I mean, it smells pretty nice, but it doesn't taste the same as it smells.
Doesn't taste very good. I got even coffee snobs like myself sometimes make mistakes, I guess. But we'll review that again next time when it's actually tasting like something more than just water. Anyways, so we've just finished up a sermon series at church here called Sacred Rhythms, and we're talking about what it's like to live in the kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God is kind of this different kingdom that Christians, no matter what country they live in, there's an ethic, there's a way to live that is just a little bit different than any given culture. And so we've been talking about rhythms that we can put into our lives to build our relationship with Jesus. And this past week I talked about the rhythm of slowing, about how we rush through our lives at 100 miles an hour and we barely even have time to think. So, Bill, I was wondering if you could maybe just kind of talk a little bit, maybe reflecting on the sermon, reflecting on your own experience. The first point was to slow down. And how does slowing down actually make a difference in our spiritual lives?
Well, I think slowing down, you don't rely on your own knowledge or impulse. I find that if you get in a hurry and you rush, you make mistakes. Sometimes they're very small mistakes and they don't really seem to mean anything, and every once in a while it adds up to being something that might cost you money, or people just think, well, you're a little bit strange. So slowing down, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays. I mean, you're working. If you have, when our children were young, you got any sports that they were in. I was fortunate they weren't in too much. But yeah, you work for 8 or 10 hours a day. You come home, you got to cut the grass, you got to maintain whatever in your house, and I always found that if I worked a lot of overtime, I'm saying to myself, oh, I can use that money to buy a new fishing rod or a new something or other, and by the time that check comes through, the water heater goes, or the furnace goes, or something else goes, and you get, at that time I used to get upset, like, wow, well, I got cheated. But now I'm a Christian, I look at, God knew that water heater was going to go, and we don't really have the money in the bank just to go and get another one, but now we do because of the overtime.
Yeah. So
slowing down so you make wiser decisions really helps, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that extra time to process. We have so much pressure put on us on our culture to live a certain lifestyle or do a certain thing, right, to get that fishing rod. But when we slow down, we begin to see things through a kingdom perspective, like you said, you had all this money allocated for what you wanted it for, but God knew what you needed. You were able to see that through kingdom eyes, which is awesome. The second point in the sermon was this idea of simplifying our life around the practices of Jesus. And you've been a follower of Jesus for quite a number of years. And what does that look like for you?
Well, what does it look like for me? When I was challenged by their adult Sunday school teacher, his name was George, that when you make your commitment to Christ, it's a way of life, it's a lifestyle, it's not just on the lips and where you go. Yeah. And I dwelt on that a lot. And so that got to the point where I could get into any situation, even at work, I would talk to Christ. Just as if I was talking to you. I mean, somebody on the outside would think you're, if I talk out loud, sometimes I do. But I talk to Jesus, can you help me here? Or if there's something bothering me, either at work or in society with family that's weighing on your mind, you mull it over, and if you put Christ first in that, you go through all these crazy scenarios, but if you slow down and just be still, all of a sudden there's a little, you can call it a little voice, it's a voice in your head, a voice in your heart, everyone's a little different, that sort of gives you the answer. And sometimes you don't really have an answer, you're worried about your children, did I raise them right, am I doing a good job? Hey, there's no handbook really, I mean they say there are, but there isn't. And then you get you can get this feeling when God says to you, am I not bigger than your mistakes? When it comes to your children, you're raising them in the church, you're doing your best job. They know Christ, they've given their heart to the Lord. trust in me.
Mhm.
So you can sort of sit back and relax a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's I'm sure that's a great encouragement to many people. You know, I've got kids, and I'm doing my best to raise them
Yeah.
with an understanding of who Jesus is, and hoping to lead and guide them down that path in their life. And yeah, thank you for that encouragement.
Well, you have to remember too, like when my children are grown and I have grandchildren. My oldest grandson's 25 years old. If they make a choice that you don't think is right, that's their choice. They're responsible to Christ after they've left the home.
Yeah.
You can't live their life for them. And it's hard to say to yourself and to your wife or your spouse, is it's their mistakes. We've already given them that advice. We've said our piece and they didn't really like it. Then they're going to have to learn the hard way. I mean, I did.
Yeah.
You know, I learned the hard way. And I used to ignore my parents' advice.
Yeah.
And it was costly in some ways. So yeah, it's something. So as a parent, you got to remember that, yeah, sometimes it's better to be quiet and back off and let them make the little mistakes, because if you push them and hold them back too much, then they can make a big mistake and it's hard to come back from.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. Thank you. That was a good rabbit trail.
Yeah.
But it was a good one. Just bringing us back onto the topic of slowing.
Mhm.
Kind of the third point that we had was, oh my goodness, I'm blanking here. Oh, the third one that we had was living from a center of abiding. And what that means is Jesus talked about how we're to remain in Him, and to the imagery was Him as the vine and us as the branches, and us living these flourishing lives as long as we're connected to Him, connected to the vine. In what ways can Christians live in a center of abiding? You touched on that a little bit, but would you mind kind of digging a little deeper on that?
Well, you have to allow yourself to trust that you put God first, Christ first, and you can listen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest part, is that wee small voice. Is sometimes you hear it, but you ignore it because it's really not what you want.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, God's good, He works around it, but it just takes longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just I put Christ first in everything. I do. If I'm indecisive, I try to take the time. I try to pray. I pray a lot. Like I say, if something immediately comes up, like right now, I'll ask God about it. I'll pray about it. Yeah. It wouldn't be a formal type prayer, but okay, Lord, what would you have me do here?
Yeah.
And sometimes there's nothing, which is a little concerning.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get this impression or feeling that you've got 2 ways of going. Go to the right. Take this trail.
Yeah.
And it's usually right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually right. Yeah. You gotta just slow down and pay attention. Because I find anytime I get myself into trouble, into a situation which is awkward, is when I rush.
Yeah.
If I rush into something.
Like making watery coffee.
Well, yeah. So
that was a light example.
Yeah, you missed the scoop.
Yeah.
It's warm. It's wet. It's okay. I mean, yeah. That's all. I can't really think of anything profound to say. It's just that's all I've done in my life.
That's fantastic, and I think I think you actually really hit the nail on the head there when you said you said you're self-deprecating a little bit. You said you can't think of anything profound to say, but you know what? You kind of already have said something profound, and that is that following Jesus and living from that center of abiding and slowing enough to actually listen to his direction for your life is something that everyone can do.
Mhm.
It's something that everyone can do on a day-to-day basis. And it is deeply profound, but it doesn't seem profound. It seems very simple and basic, but yet we get into such a hurry that we can overlook and forget and sometimes ignore.
Well, it's also good to have good Christian friends, which we have, and they know us well enough that they will subtly give us advice. They won't just point the finger or anything like that. But it's like, you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Especially when you're discussing something and you're in a group, it's like it's. If you're not sure yourself but you're still going that road and you have good Christian friends and they feel that that might not be the right way, and they're subtle enough to gently nudge you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really care how long you've been a Christian. There's always someone out there who's either had a more experience or a different experience that you haven't had yet, but you're going down that road, they've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be wise enough to recognize that. Take the time to do it. And again, take the time.
Yeah.
Just don't bowl ahead.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's so true. That's another amazing way we hear God's voice is through the wisdom of other people, other followers of Jesus as well. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's time for one final sip. I know it's a little watery, but we'll get through
Maybe
it.
if I put the rest of the cream in there, it'll have a little coffee with my cream.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I can taste that it would be good with another scoop. So we'll give you a proper review next week. But Bill, thank you again.
All right.
See you around,
See
everyone.
ya.